There are many everyday things that we overlook, and there will be many more things that we continue to take for granted. Hi everyone, my name is Prim, and today I'd like to invite you all to look at the world with a bit of a different perspective, and to consider this, that every object and every idea that you've ever interacted with in your lifetime has a story that it wants to tell. And that is the story of the change, development, and history of our world. Take any product or any object that you have on you right now. If anyone here has an iPhone, take it out and look at it. Really look at it. Not just at what's on the screen, but what's behind it. Your phone has probably been in around 43 different countries across 6 continents, traveling a distance of roughly 800,000 kilometers to wind up in your pocket. From raw materials that are being mined in parts of China and Mongolia, to the camera from companies based in Japan, to the accelerometer manufactured in Germany, and audio chips from the US and the UK, not to mention all the countries where those little pieces are assembled together into a fully functioning device. Every iPhone in this room represents more countries than probably any of us have ever been to or will ever go to. It is an invisible and incredibly intricate process that puts on display the power and significance of globalization. Globalization is defined as the ever-growing interconnectedness and interdependence between different nations in the world, their cultures and their economies. It has had an impact on all realms of life, shaping history, traditions, and cultures as we know them, while still continuing to have an undeniable impact on the present. Now, globalization is by no means a new or foreign concept. It has had an impact on history since centuries ago. But by studying this subject, we are able to not only learn how our world has been shaped through diffusion and acculturation, we also get to study how it will continue to be shaped as a whole by this trend. Now, you might be thinking that globalization sounds like a beneficial concept. After all, human beings are social creatures. It's been engineered in us to ensure our chances of survival. Perhaps it's no surprise that instead of isolating ourselves into individual nations, humanity as a whole has chosen to become integrated into one international community. And perhaps this is a good thing. After all, globalization is why you have an iPhone in your pocket. It's why I'm standing here as a student at an international school, speaking to you all in English. It's why you understand me. I'd like to take a look at this change through a social and cultural lens, and then an economical and technological lens. First of all, the elephant in the room, the internet. Social media, public networks, and the World Wide Web, all of our lives have been shaped by these platforms, for worse or for better. This is truly the definition of interconnectedness, the fact that you could go on Amazon or any other shopping platform at this moment and order literally anything from the other side of the world to your doorstep. It's the fact that you can watch movies, videos, reels, and TikToks, listen to music, and read literature from every corner of the globe. All of that is accredited to the internet and to globalization. This technological advancement has shattered trade barriers that have existed throughout all of human history. Globalization gives businesses and corporations access to entirely new markets and customers, and in return, those consumers receive new products, ideas, and innovations. Furthermore, globalization gives developing countries the potential for economic development by allowing them to benefit from increased trade opportunities. Now, this all sounds incredibly beneficial, but at the end of the day, like everything else in humanity, there may be a dark side that we need to consider. In my opinion, one of the most foremost issues that gets overlooked in favor of the positives of international trade, in favor of profit, is the complicated ethics behind cheap production and labor. Globalization has led to industries and businesses relocating to areas with lower production costs, thus increasing efficiency and profit. Now, not only does this harm local businesses and industries that simply cannot afford to function on the slower payment, it also leads to the workforce in those other areas being taken advantage of. Now, the products that we need, myself included, probably everyone in this room included, the products that we need, we buy, and let's face it, will continue to buy, are a result of cheap labor. Now, this isn't a problem that can be solved overnight. It is a system that has been ingrained into production and businesses. And it is a system that most of us benefit from unknowingly. Now, globalization has led to the spread of everyday necessities, of comfort and convenience, and of life-saving and incredibly important ideas and innovations that touch each and every one of our lives. It is complicated and morally gray, and I'd just like for you all to understand that a change that has been so incredibly beneficial in some aspects has not always been designed to improve the lives of everyone. When people discuss globalization, another topic that comes up is the social and cultural impact of this trend. With globalization comes accessibility. It is easier now than it has ever been for any ordinary person, any ordinary Joe, to travel. Traveling gives us the opportunity to explore new cultures and to become more tolerant of values and ideals that differ from our own. To quote Maya Angelou, perhaps travel cannot prevent bigotry, but by demonstrating that all peoples cry, laugh, eat, worry, and die, it can introduce the idea that if we try and understand each other, we may even become friends. Now that the world has become so much more accessible and open, we have to open our eyes to conflicting viewpoints and to cultures that we may view as foreign or strange. We have to practice tolerance and respect more now than ever. To take it a step further from travel, globalization also leads to increased international migration. For the first time in history, a population of over 281 million people now live outside their birth countries, and that is a number that has all but tripled from the 1960s. Cultural and racial diversity is now present in societies all over the world. But with that interconnectedness comes difficult, open-ended questions that are anything but black and white. I'd ask that you truly think about this and consider, should unity really be humanity's goal? After all, if we are all integrated and interdependent, what is our unique cultural identity? Is globalization creating a new, more mainstream culture that will lead us into the future, or is it erasing our traditions and time-honored past cultures? Finally, do we choose to cling to that past, or do we let go? One accusation that has been brought up again and again regarding globalization is that it will lead to the diminishing of culture, as it is being replaced by more mainstream traditions, especially Western culture. Now, I think it's important to keep in mind that cultures are not static, as we often view them. They are flexible and ever-changing as the world and the people who practice them are. As identities all over the world are combined, it is inevitable that ideas will morph and change, that traditions will evolve, and that some things will not withstand the test of time and be erased, or all but entirely forgotten. I'd like to take a look at this topic and all these complicated areas of discussion from a historical perspective. A lot of you have probably heard something along the lines of those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. This is why I love studying history. There are so many lessons and morals written in the lines of history textbooks that we can use to make our lives in the present better. There are so many evils and wrongdoings that we as a generation must remember. Now, as I've said, globalization has been around for a long time, and one of its uglier names is said to be imperialism or colonialism. Now, I think it is an undeniable fact that colonization and imperialism has changed the lives of millions upon millions of people, both in terrible and arguably beneficial ways. I think Thailand as a country is very proud of our cultural heritage. Thai people are proud that we were able to keep our sovereignty and our freedom during the height of European imperialism. However, in history, we have always been touched by globalization, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. For example, the opening of trade with many European powers such as Portugal, England, and France greatly benefited Thailand's economy, bringing in an influx of trade relationships and gold. However, at one point, Thailand was facing pressure from both the French and the British. And to alleviate the risk of a conflict, Thailand agreed to sign the Bowring Treaty with England. Now, a benefit of this was guaranteeing free trade on both sides, but it actually damaged Thailand's economy because taxes on Thai products were forced to be lowered. During the reign of King Rama V, Thailand was also forced to give up the majority of its treasury to France in order to keep its sovereignty after the Franco-Siam conflict. Essentially, globalization can have many positive impacts on a country's economy, leading to the diffusion of ideas and innovations. However, in history, a lot of trade relationships have not been fair and have taken advantage of one side, leading to economic underdevelopment instead. And this is a trend that is seen all over the world in history. Now, globalization also very evidently has an impact on culture, especially in the past. With the height of imperialism, Thailand's government was determined to not let the country fall behind in terms of development and to make it seem, for lack of a better word, more civilized to the Western world. To do this, many traditions were erased. For example, Thai traditional hairstyles and clothing were slowly and gradually replaced by European styles. Architecture also changed. When I ask you to think of Thai traditional architecture, you might think of beautiful temples, ancient ruins, and palaces. But what if I told you that this was also an important part of Thai history? Socially, globalization can also have a large impact. One of the most interesting changes that a country can assimilate is an entirely new political system. It can be argued that the idea of democracy was brought into Thailand by Western education, and much of the pressure to switch to a democratic system also stemmed from Western ideals. And this has obviously had a large impact on the country as a whole. Now, that was just a little slice of historical change that has impacted me, the lives of everyone in this room, this country, and the lives of millions upon millions of people. To me, this example does two things. First of all, it shows the magnitude and scale that this trend can have on the impact of this change on so many countries in the globe. Second of all, it shows me how it can be used for the wrong purposes. As globalization has happened in history, I think that the idea that a country whose values does not align with the global standard has to evolve and change in order to be considered civilized, it's a very damaging idea. However, I can also see all the positives that globalization has had on my life. And I, for one, am incredibly grateful for it, because without it, I would not be standing here speaking to you all as an ICS student. In another life, I wouldn't have met many of my international friends, and I wouldn't have learned so much from them in a different world. However, seeing all the problems that globalization has caused, problems like income inequality, the erasure of local culture, and exploitation, it shows me that we need to be careful. Now, I haven't personally told you and shared with you whether or not I think globalization is a good or bad concept, because truthfully, it just isn't that black and white. So instead of answering, allow me to show you what globalization means for me. I remember a conversation that I had with my grandfather many years ago. I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but we were in a mall or some public place, and he pointed to some signs written entirely in English, and he looked at me and said, "One day, the Thai language is going to disappear." Now, I'm not sure if he was serious or if he even remembers, but those words, simple as they were, stuck with me in my subconscious. Globalization has truly changed people's identities. Now, I am Thai, 100%, but sometimes it doesn't feel like that. If any of you know me, you know that my Thai is mediocre at best. I speak English more fluently than I do Thai. I interact with Western media more than I do Thai or Asian media. I go to an international school and I have friends from all over the globe. Sometimes I find myself questioning my cultural identity and where I belong. And I'm sure many of you do as well. In this period of change, it is our generation, Gen Z, that will have to learn to walk this fine line between honoring the past and moving forward to ensure happiness in the present. It is an incredibly fine line. And I just think it's important that we know that we are the generation that will have to learn to walk it. In the end, I think it's important to see globalization not as the merging of the world, but rather the linking of it. When countries and nations are culturally linked, it gives us a choice. And that is the choice to honor our traditions from the past. In this period of metamorphosis, I truly think that it is important to remember where we come from. The past is not useless, and it should not be discarded in favor of modernity. Culture is not useless. In fact, it is incredibly important because culture marks us as people. It is the lifeblood of human society, and it deserves to be treasured and cherished. We must make the choice to both honor traditions from the past and move forward, creating new traditions. In a connected world, we must remember that our actions have consequences not just on ourselves, our close circle, our community, or even our country, but rather on the whole world. Thank you.